Good morning. Thanks for being here. Today is Thursday, again, May 19, 2022, Class 5 in the series on Weibu Sayadaw, teachings and Anapanasati as the in-breath, out-breath sati mindfulness practice technique that is, I think, at the heart of Buddha Dhamma teaching and Buddhism as a whole in terms of the essence of Buddhism. In many ways can be uncovered or understood more deeply by practice, and initially by a study of the practice, which is what we're doing today. Studying Weibu Sayadaw's teachings on the practice of Anapanasati as the heart of Buddha Dhamma. And this is going to be the second chapter in the book called The Essential Practice. This is part 1. This is the second chapter, translated by Roger Bischoff from the original Burmese. And there was a paragraph in the first chapter, second paragraph, chapter 1, called What Really Matters, where Weibu Sayadaw said, the essence of the Tipitaka, the three baskets, which is Sutta, Vinaya, and Abhidhamma. Sutta means sutra or suttas, the discourses and the direct teachings, discourses and direct teachings of Gautama. Vinaya are rules or moral guidelines, and Abhidhamma is Abhi or further Dhamma, commentaries on the suttas and Vinaya and the path and all Buddhist teachings as a whole. So the essence of the Tipitaka, the three Tipitaka tea or three baskets, Pitaka, Pitaka, he said is the 37 factors of awakening, Bodhipakya Dhamma, which I'm going to talk about today. And that the essence of the 37 factors of awakening is the 8 constituents of the Noble Eightfold Path. The essence of the Noble Eightfold Path is a threefold training. Threefold higher is Abhi again, or Adi. Adi Shila, Adi Chitta, he said, which is often called Samadhi, and then Panya, or higher wisdom, Adi Panya. So Shila, Samadhi, Prajna, morality, moral guidance, mind training, and then insight, realization, awakening, release. Now, you can take that to the bank, meaning one could spend hours and hours or hundreds of lectures on just this threefold training, Shila, Samadhi, Prajna, the key. And the key is that, you live right, right action, right speech, particularly right livelihood of it also. And the mind can be trained. If you do harm, the mind won't be trainable to concentration and equanimity and steady stability that can lead to insight and awakening and release. If you can't train the mind, you can't get insight and release. And if you don't do morality or ethics, you can't train the mind. And so this is critical to understand mind training. What I want to do today is read through second chapter, A Roof That Does Not Leak, and then talk about the 37 factors of enlightenment to some degree. Again, every one of these could be amplified and expanded. We'll see the interplay of time and talk, but I'd like to go through the whole of the chapter reading, maybe make a little bit comment along the way, then go to Bodhipakya Dhamma, then come back to the chapter. But we can't finish all that today, so we'll start. So chapter 2, A Roof That Does Not Leak. from Weibo Sayadaw, translated by Roger Bischoff. And Weibo Sayadaw starts out in the lecture saying, "The contents of the 3 baskets, Tipitaka, of the sacred scriptures taught by the Buddha are so vast that it's impossible to know all they contain. Only if you're intelligent will you be able to understand clearly what the monks have been teaching you out of great compassion. You have to pay attention only to this." So, some people are more intelligent than others, and some people will say, "Oh, that's bullshit." And can you say they're not too intelligent? Maybe. Am I evil to say some people are not intelligent? The people who say this is bullshit are not intelligent? Is that evil? I don't know. Think about it for yourself. Some people will say yes, some people say no. The disciple says, "Sir, we don't quite understand what you mean by, quote, you have to pay attention only to this." And Weibo replies, "Let me try to explain it in this way. If you build a house, you do put a roof on it, don't you?" "Yes, sir. We cover our houses with roofs." "When you put the roof on, you make sure it's watertight, don't you? If you cover your house well and it rains a little, will the roof leak?" "No, sir, it won't." "And if it rains very hard, will the roof leak?" "No, sir." "And when the sun burns down, will it still give you good shelter?" "It will, sir." "Why is this so?" "Because your roof is well built." "Will you be able to know whether your roof is leaking or not after it rains?" "Yes, sir. When it rains, it's easy to find out." You see, you think that the teachings of the Buddha are vast and varied, but really they're just one single way of escaping from suffering, dukkha, also stress. Only if you take up one object of meditation given by the Buddha and pursue it with steadfast effort to the end can you justly claim that your roof is not leaking anymore. If your roof is not rainproof yet, you have to be aware of this. There must be many houses in your neighborhood and they all have roofs. What are the materials used for roofing? Before I go to that, I just want to jump in and say, you see the word only here often, and it may be an artifact of translation from Burmese to English, which is quite a feat in and of itself, but the placement of the word only is a little hard to read for me. So I will try to explain my understanding of how it means, or how the translator is intending, what Weibo Sayadaw is, what he's saying, what he means, in association with this, what to me is a difficult usage of the word only in sentences. That only if you take up one object of meditation given by the Buddha and pursue it with steadfast effort to the end, can you justly claim that your roof is not leaking anymore. Only if you take up one object of meditation. What? You must take up one object. You can take up only by taking up an object of meditation, and that there are several objects, or ways of meditation, or ways of practice. But only by doing that can you say then your roof doesn't leak. Then the roof is basically that which protects from sun and rain, from fire and water. The fire of the sun, the water of the rain. Fire and water, basically desire and anger, grasping and aversion, yin and yang, the longing and the hating, craving as associated with the clinging of desire, grasping, which is like water and goes to emotion and grief, one that we don't have, and rejecting, which is associated with aversion, obviously, and fire, like the sun. So the roof is the mind. The fire and the water is hatred, and the fire of hatred and the waters of desire. Or grasping. You could say that they're interpenetrating, or that they're always together anyway. All desire, desire comes out as desire to get and desire to release or remove or keep away. So there's the desire for grasping and there's the desire for rejecting. Both are desires, you could say. Fine. It's all coming out of craving. So craving, tanha, thirst, tanha, craving, hunger, thirst, is the basis of clinging, upadana, which is the basis of the 3 poisons or 3 unwholesome roots. which is where we find grasping and aversion. And so, fine, but we can say that these are both forms of desire, and that all grasping includes an embedded aversion, and all aversion is associated with some form of grasping or longing as well. I want it. I want something other than what I have. I hate this because I want that. And I want that because I don't like not having that. So they're always together. So only when you do the practice and put teachings into practice can you say your roof is well built. Only by building a solid roof will you find that it protects against sun and rain. So in terms of the materials used for roofing, the disciple replies, well, there are corrugated iron roofs, there are tiled roofs, there are houses roofed with palm leaves of bamboo. And Weibo replies, yes, of course. Now, if a palm leaf roof is well built, is it reliable? Oh, yes, sir, it won't leak. If a tin roof is well assembled, is it rainproof? Yes, sir, it is. What about a well-made tile roof? No rain will come through, sir. You notice every time the disciple replies with the honorific sir. These are real solid disciples. Whether they sound silly in one way or not, they really do have reverence and respect. And that's a beautiful quality, I think. What about a well-made tile roof? Well, no rain will come through, sir. What about bamboo roofs or roofs made out of planks? If they're well done, they're watertight, sir. So, if you take the roofing material you like best and build a good roof, will it give you shelter when it rains and when the sun shines? If we build it well, it will not leak, sir. We are building roofs because we don't want to become wet when it rains, and we want to avoid the scorching sun. The teachings of the Buddha are available now. Take up one of the techniques the Buddha taught, establish steadfast effort and practice. Only if you're steadfast does your practice resemble a roof, and greed, aversion, and delusion, three unwholesome roots, cannot leak through. Only if the roof is not leaking can we say that we are sheltered. If the roof is still leaking, is this because it is good or because it is not so good? And that goes to another dialogue. So the only here also goes to take up one of the techniques the Buddha taught, take up a technique, establish steadfast effort, and practice. And this, Weibo Sayadaw is, when I talk about go straight, and portrait of an adept leaving the octave. Weibo Sayadaw, the story of Weibo Sayadaw is the portrait of an adept leaving the octave. Going straight. He established steadfast effort and practice and finished. Pretty clearly to me. Clear to me that that's what happened. And so this is very much about effort. His life, his teaching is very much about making right effort. And that's actually associated with one grouping within the 37 Bodhipakkadhamma factors of enlightenment is right effort or right endeavor. I'll look at that when we get into that. So the roof is the protection against greed, aversion, delusion, which really also is any form of suffering. I mean, we can walk around and think, oh, I'm not so greedy, or I'm not so hateful, and I'm not deluded. Oh. But actually, we have very little understanding of how little we know, or how unclear we are. And Buddhism goes to the roots. And so we're talking about, enlightenment is freedom from the arising of perception and subjective consciousness. So we're still involved with the arising of perception, the sankhara, and all sorts of elements of conceit or identity-based thinking, identifications, grasping and aversion. So you don't have to call it greed and hate, but indeed we have all sorts of craving and all sorts of reification, believing our thoughts are real, believing reality or ourselves to be as we think we ourselves to be. we believe it to be so by thinking it is so, not realizing the delusive nature of our thinking and the mistaken basis, the mistake in our presumptions, assumptions, and way of naturally following our mind stream, the mind stream of perception, conception, interpretation, belief, and fashioning experience. I'm happy. I'm sad. Really? Yes. Well, you are based on your current level of awareness. Turn the light a bit brighter, and you will be in a different experience right now in this moment. And the instinctive, reflexive experience or belief that leads to the experience, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm Scott, I'm this, I'm that, changes. And with a greater light of awareness and a quieter mind and a more purified seed bed of concept and belief, personal experience changes radically. I mean, real stillness is a big deal. It is not well understood until we experience profound stillness, or stillness can be most profound, and only people who do practice, or only by practice, can we know that. And when the mind is really still, the world is not, we come to recognize the world is not the way we thought it was, and our thoughts are delusive. Like this insight, oh, self is just a thought. Right. Identity is based on arising perception. When perception stops, where's identity? So don't presume that this doesn't apply to you. It applies to all of us, because we're not finished with the octave. Even going to higher self. Even higher self has work to do, like Ross said. They're not finished with the path either. So, okay, if the roof is still leaking, is it because it's good or because it's not good? And the disciple says, because it's not so good, sir. Is it leaking because the palm leaves are not a good roofing material? No, sir. Palm leaves are a good roofing material. Or is it because corrugated iron or tiles or bamboo or planks are not suitable as roofing materials? No, sir. These are all quite right. All these are quite all right. Then why is the roof leaking? Because it isn't well built, sir. But of course, the mistake is made now. The mistake is made now. The mistake is the poor construction, not the material. Is it difficult to repair it? If one is skillful, it's quite easy, sir. Tell me then, if it leaks in a certain place, what do you have to do? We have to patch up the leak, sir. And Weibo replies, it is just the same in meditation. Now that you exert effort, there is no leak. You are safe. If greed, aversion, and delusion still drip in despite your practicing the teachings, you have to be aware of the fact that your roof is not yet rain-proof. You have to know whether the roof you built for your own house is keeping the rain out or not. This pertains particularly to the several of the categories of Bodhipakkadhamma, particularly the four Satipatthanas, or the four establishments from the Wikipedia page. They call it four establishments or presences of mindfulness, four mindfulness bases, where the third and the fourth are associated with mindfulness of mind states, mindfulness of thoughts and particular thoughts and feelings, particular thoughts arising and feeling, and also more generalized tendencies of mind, including presumptions, assumptions, and biases. Oh, I've lived in an avoidant way. I have been avoidant because I have a deep self-doubt. My aggression covered my insecurity. My insecurity covered my deep wondering regarding my value. Something like that. This is mindfulness of mental states and mindfulness of dhammas. Mindfulness, knowing the mind. And it's a lot more than, okay, I'm angry, or anger arises in this mind now. There's much more. As well as, self-psychology, knowing one's own psychology. And that's knowing the degree to which the roof we've built for our own house keeps the rain out or not. Just how well just how much are we free? Just how free are you? Just how free are we? That's a big matter. And clients saying, I thought I finished this shit years ago. Well, that shows that you didn't and you were wrong. Okay? So don't deceive yourself. Don't be self-deceiving. Lots of people, most everybody is self-deceiving. And this whole negative social structure is based on, soul rejection. So the whole entirety of human civilization, this is 3D repeater land, And some people think, I haven't had much criticism of it, but it's criticizable when I commonly talk about 3D repeaters. It's criticizable in that, why do you make a distinction between yourself and them? You think you're better? No. Even though you don't think you're better, why do you keep doing that? Well, I think one should never forget the place where one's living. I think you should never forget you're in a human body. And you're in a human brain. Our experience is mediated by a human physical body and a human physical brain in a human social complex, in a planet in third dimensional level, if we're from elsewhere. I don't think that should ever be forgotten. Now, it can be rightly forgotten in higher meditation, of course, and realize the emptiness of all that. But before you realize the emptiness of that, to be more aware of our process, to be free of our process, or free of harmful process, we do need to be keenly aware of the fact that we're working through a 3D flesh body and a 3D brain that filters mind in a 3D social complex that is nearly 98% 3D repeaters who have influenced us tremendously, right? We cannot plumb the depths of the distortions that infect your peoples, my peoples, distortions that infect, the contagious nature of distortion. We have all been infected. We are infected. We've been affected, let's just say affected, influenced by the various distortions of the social collective in which we live. That's obvious. If you, I wouldn't exaggerate its influence, but it should not be neglected either. Being super duper focused on the Illuminati and negative doings and peoples and things is a grasping attachment and an amplification. It's unhelpful, but it shouldn't be denied and avoided either. Don't deny, don't avoid, and don't get trapped by exaggeration or fear or grasping. Don't amplify, don't minimize. And that's a big piece of work. But most people minimize. The monkeys and their hands. Hearing, seeing, speaking no evil. Afraid. And yet, it's a big deal for us personally that we, a being is an open system. The mind is not fully your personal possession, Mind is sentience. And to whatever degree our mind as well is great, but we're open to the environment, and that includes the contagious distortions of the collective, which is 3D repeater. And 3D repeater has some big, serious problems in deep mind psychology or honesty. Particularly the vast sinkhole of indifference, or a very serious self-deceptive tendency. Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is all over the place, actually. Not everyone, but most. Lots. Certainly those in power. And we should be aware that our roof is not yet rainproof. And one should know exactly what that means. If you want to be free, it does help to know how you're not yet free. Just how is it that I'm not free? How exactly am I bound? How I've been hurting myself and hurting other? How have I been tricking myself or fooling myself? Or what presumptions, where am I finding, indeed, presumptions and assumptions that are wrong? And so, he's saying you have to be aware of the fact your roof is not yet rain-proof. Yeah, true. And so, greed, aversion, delusion still drip in despite our practicing the teachings. Yes. But you've got to personalize this to some degree in the sense that greed, aversion, delusion sounds like very heavy, it's sort of ham-fisted moralist language. Ham-fisted, like a big, your hand is a big ham. Bop, bop, bop. There's a lot of ham-handed folks here, a lot of ham-handed thinking here. Let's not be ham-handed or have ham-hocked hands. But yeah, we have our own personalized, refined derivatives of greed, aversion, delusion. All of us. And it's not finished until one leaves sixth density, actually. And only the Arahant finishes, only the one leaving, I believe, leaving sixth density, is actually freed from the craving for changed mental states and the craving for extinction. All the most subtle forms of craving, which lead us to all sorts of derivatives of desiring and attaching and holding tight to, which is greed, and hating and rejecting and avoiding and denying, which is aversion, and not knowing, and being mistaken and not knowing we're mistaken. Being mistaken, not knowing you're mistaken, that's the basis of delusion. So we have all sorts of raindrops dripping. Fine. It doesn't mean we should be hateful of the raindrops dripping, but it's true. And so don't fool yourself, and don't pretend to, don't lie to yourself, is the basic teaching here, I think. You have to know whether the roof you build for your own house is keeping the rain out or not. Yes. The disciple replies, "Sir, we all have the roofing materials, but the roof is still leaking. We'd like to know the technique of building a good roof." And Weibo says, don't build a thin, shaky roof. Build a thick, strong roof. And that's the basic guidance on roof building from Weibo. Build a thick, strong roof. Be quite strong and solid in your commitment to being honest about suffering and confusion and harmful tendencies and self-deception. A serious commitment to being free of pain and dukkha and stress and confusion and all harmful tendencies for self and other. It's the strength is the strength of the commitment to freedom. And that means a deep commitment to truth, which generally means admitting pain and confusion and harmfulness and what I hadn't yet seen in self and other. Okay, so, disciple, how are we to build a thick, strong roof, sir? While we're sitting here like this, we still have to endure being drenched by the rain. Weibo replies, the wise people of old practiced the teachings without allowing their efforts to diminish in any of the four postures, sitting, standing, lying down, and walking, and they kept up such a perfect continuity of awareness that there never was any gap, meaning they're fully in mindfulness in all postures throughout the day. You too have to practice in this way. The disciples of the Buddha established awareness of the spot, meaning the nose spot where the air comes in, and then did not allow their minds to shift to another object. Now, can the rains of greed, aversion, and delusion still affect those who are steadfast? No, sir, they can't. And this begins a whole discussion on breath meditation, anapanasati, as practice and taste of the fruit. The practice tastes the fruit. The fruit is complete and perfect enlightenment. The heart of Buddha Dhamma is freedom. the heart of the, the purpose of this teaching is Nibbana. And that's complete and perfect enlightenment. That's release by awareness and cutting roots of craving. Release from all binding. Release from all bases of dukkha. Total freedom from pain or stress. And the practice is a true mindfulness is sort of itself. Stabilized mindfulness is a taste of Nibbana. And so that's where he's saying the reins of greed, aversion, delusion, can they still affect those who are steadfast? Steadfast in this establishing awareness of the spot, the drop, the bindu. Actually, it's the point of contact where breath comes in and goes out. No, sir, they can't affect those who are steadfast. And Weibo replies, if you establish the same quality of awareness, whether sitting, standing, or walking, will the rain still be able to penetrate your protecting roof? Sir, please teach us the technique which will give us shelter. I mean, the answer is, of course, no. Meaning, if we establish stable mindfulness, whether sitting, standing, or walking, or lying down, the raindrop drips of delusion, harmful thought and feeling, and confusion, of any sort, but particularly craving, a desire, grasping, and aversion. Again, even that, I'm not going to get into it, but the grasping, aversion, ignorance, as a little bit more accessible way of saying greed, hate, and delusion, has to be refined. A little bit more refinement would be needed in the terminology, actually, because we are more psychologically minded than we are simply lusting, hating. I mean, we do our share, perhaps. Some people, nothing wrong, William Blake's all right with it. But we do our share of lusting and hating. But more so, we're stuck with our psychological self-referentiality, actually. And emotional wounding from the past. That's where the self-healing work comes in. So we're not exactly the same. We're still subject to grasping, aversion, ignorance, or these raindrop drips of greed, which would be called greed, hate, and delusion, or grasping, aversion, ignorance, or longing, needing, thinking we're feeling longing, imagining we're needing, and rejecting, denying, avoiding, which is aversion, and self-deceiving, mistakenly presuming, hypocritical, defense mechanism based, which is delusion or ignorance. Some kind of proper recalibration of the three unwholesome roots, three poisons, is needed. This is a big matter, actually, because he keeps talking about, greed, aversion, and delusion, which also is spoken of as greed or lust and hate and delusion or ignorance. It can be called grasping and aversion and ignorance. But we're our problems are sometimes or commonly more subtle. Our manifestation of those three poisons or unwholesome roots is usually more subtle than greed, hate, and delusion, lust, loathing, and stupidity. That sounds nice and dramatic, but our problems are usually more subtle than that. But they're the same. But they can be divided or understood in the same threefold way. So anyway, the disciple throws in the towel and says, "Sir, please teach us the technique which will give us shelter." Meaning, I know. Okay, you're the teacher. I don't know anything. Please help me. And so Weibo says, "All right, let's start the next chapter. Tell me, all of you are breathing, aren't you?" "Oh, yes, sir, we are all breathing." "When do you first start breathing?" "Why, when we're born, of course, sir." "Are you breathing when you're sitting?" "Yes, sir." Are you breathing while you're standing, walking, and working? Of course, sir. When you're very busy and have a lot to do you stop breathing, saying, sorry, there's no time to breathe now, too much work? No, sir, we don't. Are you breathing while you sleep? Yes, sir, we are. Then do you still have to search for this breath? No, sir, it's there all the time. There's no one, big or small, who doesn't know how to breathe. Now, where does this breath touch when you breathe out? Somewhere below the nose and above the upper lip, sir. And when you breathe in, at the same spot, sir. If you pay attention to this small spot and the touch of air as you breathe in and out, can't you be aware of it? It's possible, sir. When you are thus aware, is there still wanting, aversion, ignorance, worry, and anxiety? No, sir. These happen to be the 5 hindrances, by the way. Wanting, aversion, ignorance is grasping, aversion, and ignorance is lust or longing or greed or desirousness is wanting. And aversion is also loathing or hate or rejecting and avoiding. And ignorance is also self-deceiving and confusion and mistaken presumptions and assumptions and the whole panoply of egocentric biases, which I will make a point of to mention a great find at the end of the class here. Worry and anxiety also happen to be, I believe, 2 of the last 5 hindrances. So when you're aware purely, nakedly, in a sense, without mental complication, without having to think about it, without generating sankara, when one's simply aware of the breath coming and going, the 5 hindrances don't arise. So when you're thus aware of this spot where the breath's coming and going, is there still wanting, aversion, ignorance, worry, and anxiety? No, sir. You see there? You can come out of suffering immediately. If you follow the teachings of the Buddha, you instantly become happy. That doesn't mean it stays. If you practice and revere the Dhamma, you remove the suffering of the present moment, and also the suffering of the future. If you have confidence in the monks and the teachers, this confidence will result in the removal of present and future suffering. The only way out of suffering, dukkha, is to follow the teachings of the Buddha, and at this moment you are revering the teachings by establishing awareness. Do you still have to go and ask others how the Dhamma, if practiced, brings immediate relief from suffering? And so here he's talking about Buddha Dhamma Sangha, the 3 jewels, saying, number 1, this is where people obviously this is a point that you see sometimes in Dhamma Discourse and other religions too, which some people, which is easily misunderstood. You can come out of suffering immediately, right? So when you're sitting, when the mind is quiet, attentive to in-breath, out-breath, the 5 hindrances are not arising. That's called coming out of dukkha immediately. That doesn't mean it stays. It just means immediately, in the moment, one is full, one is truly out of dukkha. Yeah, no 5 hindrances when there's attentiveness to the breath. True. So there, in a sense, it's a taste of Nibbana, because it's free of 5 hindrances and craving. Then, Buddha Dhamma Sangha, 3 jewels, if you follow the teachings of the Buddha, you instantly become happy. Oh ho. Yes, true. The question is what happens after you stand up or the meditation continues. If you practice and revere the Dhamma, Buddha Dhamma, then you remove suffering of the present moment and also the suffering of the future. Right. So the more practice, and he said this before, don't think that the effects or benefits of practice are slight. True. There's a long, subtle discussion on invisible transformation of the deep mind associated with sustained sati. Sustained mindfulness practice profoundly changes the seed bed of craving or tendencies of the various forms of upadana, clinging, the manifold seed bed that arises that could be called grasping, aversion, ignorance, 3 poisons. The seeds of the 3 poisons, let's just say, associated all the seed bed of clinging, of upadana, the seed bed of upadana that leads and comes out in the triple form, the triple weeds poison weeds of grasping, aversion, ignorance, is profoundly affected by sustained samadhi, or sati and samadhi, mindfulness and concentration, for sure. And if you practice and revere the Dhamma, you remove the suffering of the present and also the suffering of the future. Absolutely, great change, great benefit comes. And then to Sangha, if you have confidence in monks and teachers, confidence results in removal of present and future suffering. The more you do, the better. A little is good, and more is better. Do what you like. So, okay, and this is, not essentially conflicting with Advaita Vedanta Atma Vichar, Aham Vichar. Aham, that's the problem. I first came into that as Aham Vichar, and then I kept thinking, Atma Vichar doesn't sound right. Yeah, Aham Vichar. The Vichar or inquiry of Aham or Ha or Eham, which is the so-called self or identity. Identity investigation. At the higher level will absolutely lead to freedom from the three poisons, for sure, as that goes deeper and deeper. One has to be concentrated on the question, on the seeking to know, aham, or the nature of identity. One needs concentration to come to an answer. One needs mindfulness to stay with it. One will be free of 5 hindrances while doing continuing deep aham vichar, of course. It's just that the other teachings, the Buddhist, the 37 factors of awakening, is a very useful, in-depth psychological training guidance that many people in Advaita Vedanta may not be aware of. Aham Vichar is very much supported by the 37 factors of awakening, for sure. And being aware of those factors, or having this Buddha Dhamma corpus of teachings, is really useful. Anyway, so do you still have to go out and ask others how the Dhamma, if practiced, brings immediate relief from suffering when you're revering the teachings by establishing mindfulness? He said, we have experienced it ourselves, so we don't have to go ask others anymore. If you know it for yourselves, are there still doubts and uncertainty? No, sir, there isn't. By keeping your attention on the spot for a short time only you have understood this much. This is only again. By keeping your attention at that spot of breath coming, going, only just, or even only for a short time, you understand just this much. What will happen if you keep your mind focused for a long time? Understanding will become deeper, sir. Right. If your time were up and you would have to die while your attention is focused on the spot, will there be reason for worry? This is working on the hindrances about doubt and worry and sloth and torpor and anxiety and all that. He said, the student replies, there's no reason to worry about one's destiny if one dies while the mind is under control. And Sayadaw Webu Sayadaw says, this frees us from suffering in the round of rebirths, and having discovered this for ourselves, we need not ask others about it. This is an important point he'll work on later. If we establish strong and steadfast effort in accordance with our aspiration for awakening, is there still cause for doubt? Shall I get it or shall I not? And the student says, no, sir, we have gone beyond doubt. Let's see the time check. And so he's working on the 5 hindrances, or talking in anent, as Bailey would say, anent, A-N-E-N-T. Anent, 5 hindrances, last 2, associated with sloth and torpor and doubt and worry and anxiety, and so certain forms of very subtle distress and over-under energy conditions of mind and body that are not directly in the 3 poisons, but supportive of the 3 poisons. So doubt and worry and anxiety and sloth and torpor and lethargy, dot, dot, dot. And this is sort of doubt regarding, am I doing the right way? Is there still cause for doubt when we've established strong, steadfast effort in accordance with the desire for freedom and awakening? Experiencing immediately the immediate benefit of mindfulness. Do you have doubt? The student says, no, sir, we've gone beyond doubt. He's just sort of parroting back because he still has doubts, actually. And Weibo replies, so, then you have full confidence, and this is the problem with not sharing your misery with the teacher. If you just sort of say, yes, sir, no, sir, rather than say, I really don't know anything when you don't, or trying to make the teacher happy doesn't make the teacher happy. Being rigorously honest and authentic makes the teacher happy, makes a good teacher happy. Making the teacher happy makes only a fraud, charlatan teacher happy. Unless you love your teacher, but pretending and playing a game to make him happy, like yes sir, no sir, in the way of being dishonest, let's say, it doesn't make a true teacher happy. The true teacher is happy when you're authentic, and if you're confused, you got to share it, because otherwise, you're kind of making him. You're sort of presenting yourself falsely. So he said, "We've gone beyond doubt." Well, this student hasn't fully gone beyond doubt. He really is saying, yes, if if we were to, as you're saying, sir, establish strong, steadfast effort in attentiveness, mindfulness to the breath, and have the mind focused on the spot, there won't be a reason for worry, and there won't be a reason for doubt. True, but I'm not there. He goes on, Weibo says, so then you have full confidence in what you're doing,